Biggest news story for me, I mean, it's this appalling story on the front of the Daily Telegraph. The BBC doctored a Donald Trump speech by making him appear to encourage those dreadful Capitol riots from a couple of years ago, according to an internal whistleblowing memo seen by the Telegraph. As a result of this story and the response, thank you for it, by the way, can I say a very good morning? Delighted to... Sarah Elliott, chairwoman of Republican Overseas UK.
I used to be. I'm spokesperson now.
Who put the wrong... Honestly, the quality of... I'm joking. Sarah, we haven't met. Delighted to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you.
This story, when I first played this clip this morning, even I nearly fell off the chair. So for people just perhaps tuning in, right, the BBC has long been criticised by broadcasters like us who believe that if you are going to be the voice of reason, you're going to be the state broadcaster, you should be unbiased. I have long railed against that and said I think they're left-wing, I think there's an ideology, I think there's undoubtedly an institutionalised view that the BBC goes with. This is absolutely appalling. This is Panorama, OK, a sort of flagship news-based programme that goes out in the evening. If you don't watch it, I don't. We're going to play you what Panorama said. This was Donald Trump's speech. We're then going to play you what actually was said by Donald Trump. And Zia Youssef, head of Reforms Policy, told me, what, 10 minutes ago, half an hour ago, there was 52 minutes between the first bit and the second bit, and they put it together. Have a watch.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
Sarah, from my personal point of view as a Brit, I am embarrassed to say that is the BBC. That is lying. That is appalling. That is misinformation. That is criminal, in my opinion. Whoever edited that should be named. I think the Director General of the BBC, Tim Davie, is on thin ice anyway. It's disgraceful.
It's disgraceful. It's deception.
Yeah.
It's not reporting. And they know that they are privileged in the broadcasting world. They have this reputation that people will believe them. And they put that out there to purposefully make you think badly of President Trump. And that really affects, you know, the American and UK relationship. It affects how people view the UK's best ally in the world. It makes it harder for Americans like me to go out and defend the Republican Party or the Republican president. But it also makes me less likely to want to go to the BBC and spend my time, you know, trying to put a best foot forward for my country. And
you wonder how you're going to be reported.
Exactly.
What you've said. Listen,
exactly.
Tam is in Cornwall. He says the BBC claimed that Trump incited violence. Turns out that because of the way they edited his speech and lied about it, they in fact were the ones who could be held responsible for inciting that violence.
Well, I think they should be held responsible for this poor piece of propaganda. It's not even journalism. You know, it is... what's also amazing to me about the BBC is that if you have a complaint about it, you don't go to Ofcom. You actually go to the BBC first.
They mark their own homework.
And they mark their own homework. Yeah. But they're the only broadcaster in this country that is allowed that privilege.
And actually, Bill in Romsey, Trump should sue the BBC for false news, fake news and defamation of character.
He probably will.
Good. Can you tell him to? Because I think it's an absolute bloody outrage.
Well, Don Jr. has tweeted about this. They are aware of this at the White House.
Have they?
Yes, and you know, the White House is following what's going on in the UK very closely here.
Let me talk about that, because interestingly on this station, and as you know this from a broadcasting point of view, when you have an election, there's a thing called Purdy. You have to be straight down the line, and you know, you have to make sure you say the Greens are a reasonable alternative and all that sort of stuff. Ridiculous. But here we are where we're at. At the moment in this country, Nigel Farage's Reform Party is ruling the roost. The critics will say there's no meat on the bone, but millions of people in this country are saying, look, we just need and believe in this man. He will be brave enough to take on the institutions, the criticism, and we believe that he is essentially proud to be British, will make tough decisions, a bit like Thatcher, and will turn this country around. You went through this yourself, and we look across the pond rather enviously sometimes. And let me say this to you, you're a Republican. not everything the Orange Man baby does do I agree with, and I'm sure
Sure.
you'd say the same, but there is something remarkably intoxicating, I think, by somebody who does what he says he's going to do. And I always use the example of the southern border, and I remember about 2 weeks after the inauguration seeing this CNN report where there was a woman with a baby and her husband all stood on the southern border crying. And the guy sort of said, "Why are you crying?" He said, "Because there's no point in me breaking into this country because they'll send me home." And I remember looking at the street and going, yes. And then somebody sent me this these figures that I think July, August, May, June and July last year, nearly 400,000 came into America. And the same time a year later, less than 500. So for me, Donald Trump does what Donald Trump says he's going to do. Everybody up in arms about the tariffs, but that's for the benefit of the United States. I don't see that in this country, and I think people are fed up to the back.
Well, they are fed up, and what I tell Americans right now, because they are concerned, everybody asks me, Great Britain is great, what is happening?
Is it great?
And well, it is a great country, it has been, and I think it will be again, but we're going through, you know, the 1970s again here in this country, and I said, listen, we are in our early Biden years right now.
Yeah.
You know, it's 2021, stick with us, don't give up. Europe is looking to America for inspiration and for guidance right now, like how do you turn the train around? And I do think that there's a lot of activity, as you've cited, with reform, and there are other think tanks and thinkers out there and broadcasters like yourself that are trying to do this.
It's really interesting for me because, of course, the critics would look now at America and say, but Trump and his election has created a divided society. A majority, of course, voted for him. And you see all the Democrats jumping up and down, and Kamala's trying to sell a book. But is that the cost? I mean, we have a divided society here in this country, and there are people whose views, I don't mind what your view is. You can have the different one to me. I just don't like the people who say I'm not entitled to a view and I should be cancelled and put in the bin, because I think that's ridiculous. I think it's a two-way thing. But America is split right now, isn't it? That would be a fair point.
Yes, it is. But then you look at what that BBC journalistic piece or the video where they sliced and diced. I mean, that divides a society.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I put a lot of weight behind the U.S. media in being so divisive and churning it and stirring the pot in America. Listen, we are where we are. Trump's inherited this mess. And so he's just got to do what he needs to do to get the job done.
It
right?
seems from a
divisive or not.
Sure, absolutely. It seems from a distance that the second administration is far more professional, far more prepared. There's less footage of people coming and going. We had this great story over here that, you know, the Labour Party were going to hit the ground running the first 100 days. It's all organised by a woman called Sue Gray, who'd gone by day 93, which is quite interesting. And patently to me, and I think many other people, having watched Waffle Face, Rachel Reeves this morning, there wasn't a plan. I get the opposite feeling with Trump. It was planned to the microsecond. That's the opinion, I get.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And they had 3 years to do it in.
Yeah.
They were extremely focused. I mean, you looked on day one, how many executive orders did he sign? And that's because Trump actually had the people around him that he wanted. He had the Republican establishment around him the first term. He was surprised he won. He didn't really know what he was doing. But
did you all think he'd win this time?
I thought the wind was at his back, absolutely. And let me also point out that in America, we had CBS doctor the Kamala Harris 60 Minutes interview, just like the BBC did with this one, in the lead up to the election. So we all knew there was electioneering. We all knew Kamala Harris was a weak candidate. What we didn't know was this quiet anti-Trump vote. Would that come out? Or could Trump actually get those independents, minorities, and youth to come out in the droves that he was polling at? And he was able to do that in the end of the day. And that CBS 60-minute interview, they had to pay him $16 million because Trump sued him.
Can you, I don't know if you've got a hotline to the White House. You are the spokesman for Republican Overseas. Can you please, if I achieve anything, could you please get him to sue the BBC? Because I think the BBC is a disgrace. Let's get a voice now. Is it Ellie? Ellie on the BBC, go.
Regarding the BBC, it doesn't surprise me at all. They're absolute liars. I stopped paying my licence with the 2016 Brexit, the bias that was there was shocking, and I actually sent a long email explaining how I didn't agree with their bias and I wasn't going to be watching them anymore. They've pestered me ever since, but they're more than welcome to come around and have a look at my come and see what I'm watching on the telly. It's certainly not them.
Listen, I'll make the point. I always make the point. Try and be as responsible as possible. I'm not condoning anybody who doesn't want to pay their licence fee. I find it astonishing, by the way, that we're reporting this story courtesy of the Telegraph 24 hours after the BBC apparently wants to increase its licence fee. That's Robert Taylor in Nottingham. I am just waiting for Donald Trump to sue the BBC. Francis in Sussex says, if the BBC can do this to the Donald, what will they do to Nigel Farage? And I think that's quite an interesting topic of conversation, because as Nigel Farage, who is riding high at the moment, and the critics will say we need meat on the bone, and people will say 3.5 years is a long time out, as the establishment comes for him, do you think, from what you've seen of British politics, that he has... I mean, the strength of Trump is astonishing. I mean, it takes, so much. Do you think that Nigel Farage has the same makeup about him?
I think he has to have it if he wants to survive. And he, again, take inspiration from his friend, the Donald. It's going to get nasty. They hate him. They never thought he would be in this position at all. No. And in fact, they never thought he'd be in the establishment. Yeah. And when I say they, I mean of the Conservative Party. Think of how many times that they prevented him from winning in, was it South Thanet? They never thought he'd be in Parliament at all.
Do you know why he will never forgive the Tory party, and why I can categorically... I don't care what anybody says about an alliance. A Christian knows this. He stood down so that Boris Johnson, he stood aside. He said, for the good of the country, they promised him a peerage. They absolutely shafted him. And I firmly believe that if... You know, it's quite interesting talking to Azir Youssef just then about policy, because the biggest criticism, as we hear, of reform is, put some meat on the bone. He made the point yesterday, Nigel, I thought very eruditely, that things change the whole time, and so one is going to respond to how things change. But I think it's going to be an interesting few months, isn't it, to see, 3 years, to be honest, to see ultimately what happens. Can I turn your attention, this is a brilliant question, I didn't write it. Let's go back to America. So, I didn't realise during the election campaign quite how useless Kamala Harris... Is it Kamala? What is it?
It's Kamala,
whatever,
like comma.
Yeah, Kamala. I didn't realise how appalling she was. And then you watch back videos of her trying to answer questions, and you think even Mark, who does the buttons here, who doesn't even know his name, could answer those questions a bit more successfully. Just a joke. She apparently might run again. Yeah. Sarah's gone.
Well, she only got to that position because she didn't have to go through a primary. Yeah. In 2020, she only had 2% of the vote and lasted like only a month or two. Yeah. The woman's not prepared. She also doesn't want to go up against Gavin Newsom. It's going to be a cutthroat fight in California there for their base. I think she's done. I don't think she's going anywhere, and she's going to be a footnote in history of what not to do.
And of course, the biggest problem for her, when everybody sticks the boot into Trump, presumably one of the biggest criticisms for Kamala Harris, apart from her inability to speak sense, was that she was part of what many Americans see as a massive cover-up as to the mental fortitude and ability to be president of Joe Biden.
You know what she could have done, and she would have been president, I think, if she had called the 25th Amendment, got the cabinet around the table and said, this man is not fit to serve. We need to take over the country.
You think she'd have won?
And then I think she would have definitely had a much better chance.
But I'm not... Look, like I said, there are things about Trump I don't agree with. But can you imagine Kamala Harris right now as the President of the United States of America? That is frightening.
I think about it because we're coming up to the year anniversary of the election, which is tomorrow, I think, is the year. And I just think where the world would be if she was president. I mean, it's terrifying.
What about the succession? Of course, in America, you have this, you can only stand twice. There are stupid news outlets that are saying Donald Trump's going to change the Constitution and stand for a third time. I don't believe that for 1 second. He'll be 80 years of age, and he'll have done 8 years. And to come back 45th and 47th, I think, is pretty unique. Is J.D. Vance the answer? Many people say Marco Rubio is the man. There seems to be a consistency around him. Are the Republicans set to dominate, or do you believe the response in, whenever it's supposed to be, I don't know, 2029, whatever, to Trump the anti-Trump vote will sweep somebody like Gavin Newsom, I mustn't say Newscomb, to power?
I think that Vance is probably in the lead right now, especially with the MAGA base and the young people. You know, he's very engaged with Turning Point, which was the Charlie Kirk outfit is. And I think Marco Rubio is definitely mixed up there, but he's not talked about as much. He's not as public. He's not, I think he's focused at the job at hand right now, being Secretary of State. I don't see anyone else, but I mean, it's all about events. You never know. I don't see anyone on the left right now that's a formidable choice, but...
From a distance, you get the impression that, a bit like the Tories here, that the Democrats are so shell-shocked at the success of Donald Trump that they just don't even, nothing's happening. They're just looking at each other going, how the hell did this happen? This is appalling. This man is an awful human being. And 52% of America voted for him. Yeah,
and what they should be doing is looking at themselves, because they're the ones that have been running the country, you know, for the last over a decade, took us in forever wars, you know, sold all our manufacturing to China. I mean, they need to look at the positions that created a populist movement. And that's what this government should be doing. They should be going, well, why is Nigel Farage a threat? Well, that's because of net zero energy policy.
Net stupid zero.
I mean, raising the standard of living, inflation, the COVID spending spree. I mean, it's endless.
Yeah.
The DEI.
Oh, God, you are one of us. I'm delighted to have you on. For old time's sake, OK, we've loved having you on. We say a massive thank you, Sarah Elliott, spokesperson for Republican overseas. For old time.